well as what we're taking. The potassium iodide disappeared from the shelves pretty much, and they may start to come back now as the fright is waning a bit. But I preferred anyway going with these more natural protections against radiation. The immune system also, we should understand that, like we talked about earlier, it's amazing we're all still alive. The immune system, if you take care of it, and we recommend nutritionals ideally that would come from good, solid, organic, raw foods, fresh, not grocery store bought, buying your own, creating your own, growing your own, and also the hydroponics, the ability for even people in zones of cold winters, you can have ways to grow your own and live sustainably. But these are the most important things to boost your natural immunity. Every single one of us develops cancers. We're always getting radiation from the sun, those radiation electrons that cause damage to DNA, and then the cells grow haywire. The average person about 20 years ago had about 500 cancer cells growing in their bodies at any given time. And again, it's the immune system's capacity to seek out and destroy that which is non-self, that which is a bacteria or a virus or a damaged genetic cell that's going haywire. The macrophages are supposed to gobble those up and destroy them because they're not of you, they're foreign. And so that's a natural protection. And frankly, I'm getting kind of old and I guess my critics would say senile, but the reality is that I'm clear that the most powerful force in the universe for healing and sustaining you is the sound of your voice in 528 hertz, the heartfelt loving intention of your prayer with faith that moves and empowers the power of the spoken word and prayer, and bringing that glorious spiritual energy in. Again, the concept that there's nothing missing or broken in the kingdom of heaven. Well, if you can bring it down into your own Holy Spirit-filled temple, you can blow out anything. You can blow out cancers, blow out influenza, blow out even Ebola. I mean, 10% of the people somehow survive Ebola. And I guarantee you, if they did a study, you'd find a high percentage of those people have tremendous faith and used a lot of prayer to do it. So this is, again, critical knowledge for this time in history. Again, it's basic survival intelligence. And you either are into it or you're an idiot, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, Len, and you don't sound senile to us. Diane has got the last question for this section. Diane.
Yes, Len, water and its healing properties are something that many people are beginning to understand. But as scientists are now pointing out, we are all interconnected, and presumably that goes to Terra itself as well, or the Earth. Do you see water in the form of a tsunami perhaps being used by nature to cleanse the Earth, with particular reference to the Japanese tsunami and the resulting damage to the nuclear plants?
That's an interesting question. I view it in a different context than you're viewing it, but let me see if I can answer the question. First of all, I have the greatest respect for water. I love my dear brother Masaru Emoto. I'm sure you probably saw that he triggered a global prayer session on Saturday, and it was for the water off of Japan, but actually that's connected to all the water. I think you mentioned that. And this concept of what I respect most and love most about water is the fact that it's literally part of the triune God. That in the beginning, in the Bible, in Genesis 1:1, you already had the water there when the Creator was there. And in Genesis 1:2, you had the Holy Spirit of the Creator hovering over the face of the water, dividing the water from the water to create what the Bibles call the ether or the firmament or the dome that the physicists call the quantum field, into which the words are sound, sounds are electromagnetic frequencies. What's that? Simply mathematics, into which the math was spoken, let there be light, and out popped the sun. And that's very similar to the model that's demonstrated by dolphins who play with bubble rings underwater and sonically vibrate them so hot they approach the temperature of the sun, and out pops light. It's called sonoluminescence. I wrote about that. Actually, Michael Hyson, who's a genius expert in cetacea behavior, worked with John Lilly with the dolphins, wrote a chapter in the book DNA, Pirates of the Sacred Spiral, and it deals with this issue. And this concept of water being more than that liquid that we use to dump our waste is essentially what I feel is part of the revelations for salvation and spiritual evolution. The understanding that water is a liquid crystal superconductor of sound and light. The understanding, as Dr. Emoto talks about, that it's conscious, that it responds to prayer by changing its structure and actually delivering messages directly to the people who are praying over that water, that are specifically tailored to give specific meaning, unique individual meaning to those people that are praying. The concept is very similar to looking at what God's relationship is to you and how you can, through your own prayer and heartfelt loving intention, produce miracles hydrosonically. That is, the entire universe we now know from NASA science about 10 years ago that all of space, entire universe, is made of water. It's full of water. They filmed water in Mars rocks. They filmed ice particles in space. And so that really, the science bears out the entire creationistic understanding that's laid out beginning with Genesis. And this notion that you are a digital, again, this is the best definition of who you are. You're a digital, bioholographic precipitation, crystallization, miraculous manifestation of divine frequency vibrations coming out of water and sustained by water. That means every nano instant you're being recreated musically, mathematically, as, digitally, digitally. You're manifesting as a precipitation, like a raindrop, a small nidus of a particle of electron in the cloud suddenly begins to coalesce H2O, these tetrahedron pyramid-shaped structures of hydrogen and oxygen suddenly come together, and then it forms a drop and it rains. That's very similar to how you're precipitating energetically. You're a crystal, basically DNA, the amino acids, the proteins. These are crystals. They're biocrystals. Water itself, I mentioned, is a liquid crystal, superconductor. And most of your body, 80% is water. So your 80% of you is part of the triune God. The whole concept gives us a different appreciation of who our fellow human beings are. Brothers and sisters are really part of a divine family. And so recognizing that understanding, and that they're manifested musically, mathematically, miraculously. And again, when I say miraculously, there's certainty that the heart of everything is 528 hertz, which is the third note of the ancient solfeggio, the original musical scale. It's 528. That's the mi note. Do, re, mi, miragistorum, as I mentioned, miracles in English. It's the miracle note, and you are a miracle manifesting every nano instant by the sound frequency, again, coming through the universe, made of God water. That's why Jesus called water. I think this is in the beginning of Mark. He refers to water as spirit water. Not just water, it's spirit water. It's God water. and that this concept of that we can even potentially use water to clean everything. It's the universal solvent. You know, we talked about many times when we held the concert for the living water back in 2009, we talked about joining the universal solvent with the universal language, music, in 528, to produce the universal healer, love, and spread that out like a pebble in a pond, rippling out all over to the farthest shores of the universe, and certainly influencing the hearts of humanity. That was the goal of the Concert for the Living Water, and we're praying that other people will pick it up and start another one for 2011. And this concept of having the waters be the source of the great destruction on earth, it's not of God. It's clearly of the Illuminati. In fact, you know, I in this sense, I'm pretty much of a fundamentalist, because I believe that the Bible said when God was so sickened back in the Bible story of Noah and his age, when the big floods came, that God was so torn up by the destruction of his beloved children that he swore he would never have this kind of thing happen again. So I don't expect to have another flood. I expect to have a nuclear and global pollution problem, because that's clearly what the Illuminati have set up. And that the concept of using revelations about water, about how we're made out of water and sound, and how water being the universal solvent, that if we could bring humanity to grasp the magnificence of water and its sustaining abilities, you'd have certainly the theology, if you will, the real science of creationism, and the understanding of how we can sustain ourselves and our planet and move through this hideous time in history and celebrate ultimately 1,000 years of world peace.
Okay, we're going to now move into the 528 hertz frequency healing and intent section. Lua, can you ask your question of Len, please?
Oh, this is fabulous. Okay, Len, I've gone to a number of websites, been exploring all the information I could find about the 528 hertz vibrational patterns, and I am still hopelessly confused about exactly what you're talking about. For instance, when you talk about the resonance of 528 hertz, are you talking about the specific pitch that vibrates at that exact number of hertz, or are you talking about a scale of notes based on that specific vibration as the tonic note in the scale, or something else that I haven't figured out yet? And I heard part of what you were saying there. It sounded to me like you were suggesting that the 528 hertz was the mi, the do-re-mi, the third above the tonic. Can you explain that part of it?
Yes, and you're not the only one. Not being a really professional musician, I dabble in it. I can tell you that I was as equally confused as you are right now, and most people will be, except for good musicians who have been involved in understanding and studying musicology and scales and the difference between scales and pitches. So let me just start from the beginning so that maybe you can get a better understanding.
Okay.
So yes, there's difference between pitch and scale. And let's start with A440 standard tuning. That's a Rockefeller Foundation manipulation. And that it actually, we should come back to this topic, but let's again start